Good morning. Today we leave Sorrento, head to Naples, and my razor finally ran out of battery, so I'm clean shaven for the rest of the trip. And welcome properly to Naples. Today is a bonus video because we got to Naples a little earlier than expected, so we're gonna go to the Archaeological Museum where they're holding all the relics and artifacts taken from Pompeii and Herculaneum. Starting around the 8th century and stretching pretty much up until early Roman times, the Greek city-states started to send out colonists whenever their populations would get too high. At first they colonized the Aegean, so you can see this area, and then later on they moved up as far as the Black Sea north coast. I don't think that they ever got here because the Phoenicians were on that side. They put some places like Cyrene in North Africa, and importantly, tons of colonies found themselves in southern Italy and Sicily. In fact, Naples, Napoli, if I remember correctly, was called Neapolis at this time, and it sat on the site of a Greek colony. Here are some early golden Orphic laminae found in this region. They contain almost invisible now Greek texts, which basically behaved as a book of the dead, allowing the man with whom they were buried to effectively reach the afterlife. Here are some Greek letters inscribed into a funerary altar. Here's a giant statue of the Roman Emperor Severus Alexander. I'm pretty sure he looks this way because he was a teenager at the time and he really never got the chance to get much older. Here's Hadrian, who built the big mole that became Castel Sant'Angelo. Ooh, there he is. This is a big Vespasian. I'm trying. Here's the head of a quote-unquote barbarian. Here's a huge statue of Asclepius. Interesting tidbit. Asclepius was always associated with an Egyptian god, Imhotep, who served the same roles, and it's thought that they influenced each other quite a bit. Imhotep actually was a person who lived during the reign of Djoser and was responsible for designing the first step pyramid. He was a bit of a Da Vinci, and he also came up with a lot of different treatments for bone breaks and other injuries caused by building the pyramid. And so it's, in some sense, this is a statue of an Egyptian guy that lived 4,500 years ago. Here's some dogs. Here's a panther if you've never seen a panther. Look at this guy. I found my Halloween mask this year. Just can't get away from Trajan, can we?
Additions, white marble additions.
We have marbles from the Domus Flavia. That was that palace we walked through on top of the Palatine back in Rome. Ooh, here's a skewered dragon kebab. Here is a face, a funerary stele, with fragments of Aramaic writing on it. It's an Egyptian stela with, I'm guessing, records of offerings based on the fact that it's labeled as a table and has little pictures of the offering determinative sign on it. Someday I will learn this. Sadly, the rest of that exhibit is closed for maintenance, so moving on. Now we enter the massive exhibition. The 50+ rooms dedicated to objects taken from Pompeii and Herculaneum. Here is a scale model of the ruins of Pompeii. You can get a bird's eye view of everywhere we went in the Pompeii video. Over there we've got the theater that we explored. Here's the forum. Let's see what else. We've got the Macellum. We basically just came in, explored this, went along that road, saw that theater, and then beyond the edge of this is where we found that amphitheater. Here are some bowls found at one of the stabii. You can see that it sort of looks like a Greek pot, but with ancient Egyptian influences on the actual characters inside of it. Here's a Zeus-Ammon tablet. Zeus-Ammon being a syncretism between the cult of Zeus and the Egyptian cult of Ammon. This was found at Herculaneum. Here's a brazier. Still full, I'm guessing, with the ash and mud that was in it when they excavated it. And here are more complete examples of what those architectural wall decorations used to look like. You can see that they make use of the fact that in the foreground things are much clearer, and in the background not only are they further away, but they're more faded. Because look, you can see the markings of the things further away as much gentler, like they're coming out of a mist. That was actually something that was not rediscovered as an artistic technique until the time of Da Vinci. So the Romans were a lot more clever in many ways than they get credit for even today. Look at this. Look how much more advanced this perspective is than any medieval painting. It is amazing that they were making this back in Roman times. The Romans really loved to fill their buildings with pictures of other buildings. This is how I feel after a month of Italian pastas. Yeah, I need to be eating less noodles and more cow. Or I could eat this instead. Here are more images, more still lives taken from the Casa di Cervi. It's all just fruits and breads and a big old bowl of pomegranates and grapes. Look at how much art was on the walls of that city. This is just one room in maybe 20 or 30. Here's a very realistic painting of a column. Here are various paints and pigments, mostly made from minerals imported from across the Mediterranean. Except black, that was just ash. Here's a baby with his dolphin. See, this chest is less impressive than the ones from the Medici Palace. Here's some armor, some greaves, and some helmets taken from the gladiatorial barracks of Pompeii. This is what the guys who fought in that amphitheater would have worn. And here's what's left of a gladius. Look how small it was. It's like my forearm times maybe 1.3 or 1.4. Very far removed from the long swords and hand-and-a-half swords and other weapons that succeeded it. A gladiator graffito. Here's a whole silver dining set taken from the house of Menander. Doesn't look too far off silver plate you can get today. Here are various brass and bronze components of silverware, or of furniture. Imagine have this little guy staring at you on your couch. Here we've got the chorus. Look at this cameo glass. I've seen some neat carboys, but this one takes the cake. Look at this guy, just the right size for a decanter. This looks a lot like the little lemonade pitcher from the painting in the House of the Deer in Pompeii. Household gods. An enormous panpipe. And a normal flute. Based on the layout of the rooms and this giant gallery, I believe this building was probably a palazzo back in the day. It contains this interesting sundial calendar called a camera oscura calendar. There's a tiny little hole up there, right you can see sort of the white dot of it right there, where toward midday the sun will shine down and create a little dot on the floor. And when that dot is directly along this line, that's midday. Furthermore, because the sun moves up and down with the analemma over the course of the year, where it is along this line determines the time of year. They look the same, don't they? Here's a sarcophagus, the exact size and shape of an urban dumpster. All these statues come from the buried cities. It's probably why they're all so intact. Look at them all. There's even a big horse. And here is an incredibly thick set statue of Titus, who was not yet emperor. His dad was still in charge when Herculaneum was buried. And here's another bulbous, or as it's labeled everywhere, bulbo. Except for some reason, in this variant, he's naked. Here he is again. This time appropriately clothed and riding a giant veiny marble horse. This is a heavily draped statue which it's thought might depict Cicero. It's amazing how small Herculaneum was and yet how much statuary there was. We go to a few museums and we see a few statues and we think, oh, you know, these are the masterpieces of ancient history, but this was a small town and it had all of this, so what was it like in its prime, that empire? This is a giant Jupiter statue. Monster. This severe-looking woman is Matilda, who was Trajan's niece and the wife of Hadrian. Moving on, there is an exhibit about the prehistory of the Naples area. For instance, all of this earthenware and these tools and implements are from the Bronze Age and were discovered in a cave not too far from here. Here's some things made of antler. Here are some funerary urns from the Iron Age, which was during the first half of the last millennium BC. These spirals are kind of neat. And here are some other tools, including a knife for cutting the meat, some barbecue skewers, and a huge bronze pot for cooking stew. And here, in this dark, out-of-the-way room, are a ton of enormous pots. That's like two of me could curl up in there. From the island of Ischia, which back in the day, back in Greek times, was the oldest Greek colony in Magna Graecia, Pithecusae. It was, for a while, one of the most important ports in the Mediterranean, and it was where Etruscan, Phoenician, and Greek goods all came together. Here's some more of them. Welcome to the Pottery Barn. Here's a neat perfume container. And some broken dishware. And here's a guy wearing a crazy-looking mud mask. Yet another wonderful chess set opportunity. Mm-hmm. And we've got some mirrors, but I don't think they work very well. You ever actually seen a person that looks like this? Here's all that was cast of a huge horse designed by Donatello. Look at the size of that bad boy. Naples has decidedly more outdoor art than the other cities we've visited. Back at the hotel, and this time, I get a view. Get to see all of Naples spread out in front of me, hustling and bustling, probably a lot like Pompeii was back in its time. And much like Pompeii, I get to stare at that bulky mountain, which hopefully does not go off while I'm here. Fingers crossed. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the Archaeological Museum at Naples. There was a lot of Pompeii stuff. There were none of the bodies, none of the casts that one typically associates with Pompeii, which honestly, I'm okay with, because those are kind of tear-jerking, and I'd rather enjoy seeing all the ancient Roman art and the ancient statues and the ancient pottery versus a bunch of people dying and suffocating to death. So sorry for those who are a fan of the macabre. I don't have any of those in this video. Tomorrow we're gonna go do some sort of pasta cooking thing that my mom has booked. So that's exciting. I think that's going to be fun and delicious, and maybe I'll learn how to make pizzas and pastas, but I don't know if it will be video worthy, so there's a good chance I won't record it. I also don't know what my next trip will be. I've been tossing around the idea of going to Alaska next year, but after how much I've enjoyed Italy, I might come back. An alternative to that would be doing something probably not quite this long, maybe 3 weeks, such as going to Greece, or going to Germany, because I already speak German, so I wouldn't have to learn another language for that. Or maybe Spain, but I kind of want to wait until they're done with the Sagrada Familia for that one. Or maybe I might just, bite the bullet and go to Japan, since I've got some friends who've wanted to do it, and that might just be a fun thing to do. So I don't know. When my next video drops, I'm sure y'all will find out. So until then, thanks for watching, and good night.